Imagine you dedicating years to your law degree, with a marriage that seems to be the solid foundation for your future. Now, imagine discovering that your wife is having an affair, not with just anyone, but with one of your professors, the mentor who should exemplify the ethics and integrity that you study so diligently. That's exactly what happened to Joe, an exemplary law student who found himself doubly betrayed personally and professionally. In today's story, we'll follow Joe's journey from the painful discovery to the extreme measures he takes using his legal knowledge to expose the truth and seek justice. Ready to dive into this tale of betrayal, courage, and redemption? Then keep watching. Joe was in the final year of his law degree, standing out as one of the most promising students. His 5-year marriage to Sarah seemed perfect to all who knew them. However, Joe began to sense a change in Sarah's behavior, who had always been transparent before and shared details of her day. Lately, she had started coming home later from work, always with new excuses, unexpected overtime, meetings that dragged on, car issues. Joe tried to convince himself that it was just the pressure of her job, trying to brush aside the suspicions that were slowly creeping into his thoughts. The suspicion grew when, on a quiet night, Joe woke up alone in bed. He went downstairs to the kitchen and found Sarah on the phone, speaking quietly. As soon as she noticed his presence, she quickly ended the call. "It was just a colleague with problems on the project we're working on," she explained quickly, avoiding his gaze. Joe nodded, trying to ignore the internal alarm screaming that something wasn't right. He focused even more on his studies, dedicating himself to the complexities of the law cases he studied, trying to use the logic and reason he handled so well in his academic analyses to silence the voice in his head. Something was deeply wrong in his marriage. Joe's suspicion began to grow when he noticed frequent hushed and rushed phone conversations on Sarah's phone. She always said they were co-workers discussing urgent and complicated projects. However, the frequency of these calls and the furtive way Sarah conducted them began to deeply trouble Joe. One day, arriving home unexpectedly earlier, he found Sarah quickly closing her computer screen. "Just checking some work emails," she said with a hurried and nervous smile. One afternoon, while studying at the university library, Joe decided to retrieve some extra books he had left in Sarah's car for a more in-depth review of his final project. He searched her closet for a jacket she often wore, knowing she usually left the car keys in the pockets. As he patted down the pockets, his heart raced upon finding something unexpected. A receipt from an upscale restaurant, dated the previous night, a dinner for two. At the same time, Sarah had said she was working late. The restaurant's name jumped out at him, a place known for its exclusivity and romance, not an environment for work discussions. Joe felt like the ground was opening up beneath his feet. The truth seemed clear, and yet a part of him wanted to find a logical explanation, an innocent reason. He pocketed the receipt, a small piece of paper that weighed tons in his hands, marking the beginning of an investigation he never wished to conduct. He returned to his studies, his mind swirling with possible scenarios, each more painful than the next. As he tried to maintain an outward appearance of calm and focus on his legal studies. Intrigued and hurt, Joe decided to further investigate Sarah's behavior. The opportunity presented itself one night when she mentioned another late work commitment. Joe, feeling a mix of desperation and a need to confront reality, decided to discreetly follow Sarah to see if his suspicions were founded. He waited in his car, parked at a safe distance where she wouldn't see him. Sarah left home with an elegance Joe hadn't seen in months. She drove to an upscale restaurant in town, and Joe followed, maintaining a cautious distance. Seeing her enter the restaurant, he waited a few minutes before deciding to discreetly go in himself. Joe's heart was pounding, a mixture of fear and a burning need to know the truth. Upon entering, he positioned himself where he could observe without being seen. There was Sarah, not with a co-worker, but with Dr. Williams, Joe's legal ethics professor, a respected and influential figure at the university. The scene before his eyes was a devastating blow. They were seated hand in hand, sharing laughs and looks overflowing with intimacy. The shock and betrayal felt by Joe was indescribable. The man who should exemplify ethical conduct was involved with one of his students' wives. Joe felt a mix of rage and desolation as he watched, hidden in the shadows, the woman he loved brazenly betraying him. This revelation not only broke his heart, but also deeply shook his sense of justice. Joe knew that this night would change the course of his life and future choices in a way he could never have predicted. With his legal knowledge, Joe carefully planned his approach after witnessing Sarah and Dr. Williams' betrayal. Feeling betrayed but determined to act prudently, he spent several sleepless nights researching the best legal ways to handle the situation. He knew he needed concrete evidence, not just to confront Sarah and Dr. Williams, but also to present a convincing case of unethical conduct against the professor, should he decide to take the matter to academic authorities. Joe began meticulously documenting every suspicious encounter, every phone call, every receipt. He installed monitoring software on the computer they shared at home, under the guise of security, which allowed him to access emails and messages confirming the relationship. He also kept a detailed diary, noting dates, times, and descriptions of each suspicious activity, creating an evidence file that would be difficult to refute. When he finally confronted Sarah and Dr. Williams, it was with a dossier of evidence in hand. He chose a moment when he knew they would both be together, approaching them in a university study room after one of Dr. Williams' classes. With a steady voice, but inwardly shaken, Joe presented the evidence. Photographs from their dinners, transcripts of messages exchanged between them, and testimony from friends who had seen the couple in compromising contexts. Sarah, caught off guard, broke down in tears as she tried to explain her actions. Dr. Williams, for his part, initially tried to deny the accusations, but the evidence was irrefutable. He mumbled tattered apologies, visibly shaken by the coldness and precision of Joe's accusations. This confrontation not only marked the end of Joe and Sarah's marriage, but also the beginning of a broader process against Dr. Williams, highlighting Joe's determination to pursue justice and maintain integrity in his future profession. The revelation shook Joe deeply, but he used that pain as fuel for his determination. After confronting Sarah and Dr. Williams, Joe focused on using legal procedures to ensure justice was served, both in his personal life and in the academic sphere. He initiated divorce proceedings, finding a lawyer who shared his insistence on ethics and transparency. Simultaneously, Joe filed a formal complaint against Dr. Williams at the university, including all the evidence he had collected. The divorce proceedings were swift, given the amount of evidence and Sarah's lack of defense, as she admitted her mistake and accepted the divorce terms without contesting. The most challenging part for Joe was dealing with the public scrutiny and emotional pain that surfaced during the hearings. He felt every gaze and whisper in the university hallways, but remained steadfast, knowing he was upholding greater principles of justice and integrity. The case against Dr. Williams, however, proved more complex. The university initially hesitated to take drastic actions, given the professor's stature and influence in the law department. However, Joe's determination to expose the truth and the growing support from other students who began to come forward with their own stories of questionable behavior by Dr. Williams forced the institution to act. Disciplinary proceedings were instituted, and Dr. Williams was eventually suspended pending a full investigation. These actions not only marked a turning point in Joe's academic and personal career, but also served as a testament to his strength of character and resilience. He emerged from this experience not just as a law student, but as a relentless advocate for ethics and morality. Joe spent the following days immersed in legal books and documents, meticulously preparing his case against Dr. Williams. He knew he would face resistance, given the respect and influence the professor held at the college. However, Joe was determined to show that no one was above the law, least of all someone teaching legal ethics. In his small apartment, the space was covered in papers and sticky notes, mind maps of legal concepts, citations of precedents, and litigation strategies formed an intricate web of information that Joe used to shape his arguments. He consulted books on ethics, case studies, and newspaper articles discussing similar issues of professional conduct, seeking to ground his case not just in emotional evidence, but in sound legal and ethical arguments. In parallel, Joe began connecting with other students who may have been affected or had their own observations about Dr. Williams' behavior. These conversations often took place in discreet settings, off-campus cafes, or even on walks, to ensure privacy. Many hesitated to speak up, fearing academic retaliation, but Joe's determination and sincerity convinced them to share their experiences. Each new testimony added a layer of validity and urgency to the case, forming a collective narrative that was hard to ignore. This meticulous preparation not only strengthened Joe's case, but also honed his skills as a future lawyer. He was learning not just legal theory, but how to apply it practically and meaningfully, taking on a system that many saw as untouchable. His commitment to justice and truth was becoming an integral part of who he was, defining him as a professional and as a person. Meanwhile, Joe's personal life was in shambles. He and Sarah decided to live separately while the divorce proceedings were underway. Every encounter with her was a reminder of the betrayal, but he tried to maintain his composure, focusing on the justice he was seeking. The home they once shared was now divided, with each other's belongings packed into boxes, marking the end of a chapter they thought would last a lifetime. The loneliness of his new days was palpable. Joe often found himself returning to an empty apartment, where the walls echoed the laughter and conversations of happier times. On the toughest nights, he would take refuge in his work, using the pain as fuel to push forward in his quest for justice. Despite the support of friends and family, there was an emptiness that only time could begin to heal. During this period of transition, Joe also began attending therapy, seeking to understand and process the emotions that the conflict and divorce had surfaced. The sessions were challenging, at times painful, but necessary for his emotional recovery. He learned to recognize and accept his feelings of betrayal and anger, working to transform them into something constructive. This phase of his life, though marked by loss and challenges, was also a time of personal growth and self-discovery. Joe began to realize that his identity was not solely tied to his marriage or career, but that he could redefine his path according to his own choices and values. The resilience he was developing now, facing adversity with integrity, prepared him for any challenge the future might hold. The case against Dr. Williams began with a preliminary hearing at the university, where Joe presented his evidence. The messages exchanged between Sarah and Dr. Williams, the dinner photos and testimonies from peers that began to surface after Joe's courage in reporting, formed the basis of his presentation. The room was tense, with faculty representatives, students, and some professors present. The academic community, once a place of support and learning for Joe, now seemed a battleground where he fought for his honor and the ethics that the legal profession demanded. During the hearing, Joe spoke confidently, despite his nerves. He detailed each piece of evidence, explaining how each contributed to a clear pattern of unethical behavior on Dr. Williams' part. He not only focused on the evidence, but also highlighted the importance of maintaining an academic environment based on mutual respect and integrity. His voice was firm, and his gaze, determined, did not waver, even when meeting Dr. Williams' eyes, who tried to maintain a neutral stance. Dr. Williams' response was defensive. He tried to discredit Joe, alleging he was a troubled student seeking revenge for low grades. However, the evidence presented by Joe was irrefutable. Each attempt at defense seemed weak in the face of the collected documents and testimonies. Moreover, other students began to feel emboldened by Joe's stance and went public with their own experiences and observations of the professor's questionable behaviors, further reinforcing Joe's case. The impact of this hearing was profound. It not only began to shift perceptions around ethics and conduct within the university, but also served as an example to other students that it was possible to fight injustice, regardless of the authority of the oppressor. Joe's courage in confronting such an authoritative figure within the institution inspired a broader movement for transparency and justice on campus. During the hearing, Dr. Williams tried to discredit Joe, alleging that he was a troubled student seeking revenge. The room, filled with students, professors, and members of the academic board, watched intently as Dr. Williams defended his position. He spoke with a forced calmness, trying to project an image of control and authority, despite the evidence presented. "This is a direct attack on my character and career, based on unfounded allegations from a student whose academic performance may have influenced his perception of justice," he declared, looking at the board members. However, the evidence presented by Joe was clear and detailed. He had organized emails, text messages, and testimonies that painted a very different picture than the one Dr. Williams was trying to portray. Furthermore, the intimate dinner photos directly contradicted Dr. Williams' claim that his relationship with Sarah was purely professional. With every defensive attempt by Dr. Williams, Joe responded with facts and evidence, systematically dismantling the professor's arguments. Joe's demeanor during the hearing was one of unwavering determination. He spoke not just for himself, but for others who felt intimidated and silenced. "We are here not only to judge a case of misconduct, but to affirm our values as an academic community, values that Dr. Williams, entrusted with teaching ethics, should exemplify," Joe stated, his voice laden with conviction. The reaction in the room varied. Some professors seemed uncomfortable, perhaps reflecting on their own conduct, while many students looked at Joe with a mixture of admiration and gratitude. His courage in bringing the case to light was beginning to generate a broader dialogue about ethics and integrity at the university, suggesting the impact of this case would extend beyond those directly involved and prompt more significant changes within the institution. With the support of friends and peers, Joe finally graduated with his law degree, his graduation tinged with personal pains, but also a significant moral victory. He not only excelled in his studies, but also in his integrity and courage. The graduation ceremony was a bittersweet moment for Joe. As he walked to receive his diploma, there was a mixture of pride and relief in his eyes. He had faced challenges that went beyond typical academic demands, fighting for justice in a field he was about to enter professionally. After receiving his diploma, Joe was approached by several peers and professors, some of whom had been skeptical about his battle against Dr. Williams. Now, with the case widely discussed and Dr. Williams' conduct under investigation, many came to congratulate him on his bravery and ethics. "You really made a difference," one professor said, a comment that resonated deeply with Joe. He knew his fight had initiated important conversations about accountability and ethics in legal practice, themes he planned to continue exploring in his career. Joe's reception from the students was particularly touching. Many young lawyers expressed their admiration and gratitude, seeing him as a model of integrity and courage. "Your story inspired us not to accept the status quo," said a group of students, who approached to personally thank him. These moments reinforced Joe's decision to continue working to reform the system from within. Fostering a culture of ethics he believed was fundamental to the legal profession. This graduation was not just a closing of an academic chapter for Joe, but also a launch into a career that promised to be influential and transformative. He looked to the future with determination, ready to challenge and change established practices in the justice system, armed with knowledge, personal experience, and a growing support network stemming from his courageous actions. After graduation, Joe began his career at a respected law firm. His personal experience with betrayal and justice shaped his legal focus, making him a dedicated attorney for ethics and morality. He specialized in family law and professional ethics, using his own story as an example of the impact of integrity in legal practice. At the firm, Joe quickly gained a reputation as a meticulous and compassionate lawyer. He understood the emotional nuances of the family law cases many of his clients faced, offering not just legal support, but a rare sensitivity that was often deeply valued by those going through turbulent times. His approach to the law was not merely technical, but profoundly human, a skill he honed more and more. Joe also initiated a blog and a series of workshops on professional ethics, sharing his experiences and insights. He became a sought-after speaker at law and ethics conferences, discussing the importance of impeccable conduct across all professions, but especially in the legal field. His work led him to collaborate with organizations promoting transparency and ethics in business and education, expanding his impact beyond the courtroom. Every case, every consultation, every decision Joe made was imbued with his steadfast belief in justice and integrity. He not only sought to resolve cases effectively, but also to ensure the process was conducted ethically, serving as an example for his colleagues and opponents. Through his hard work and dedication to ethics, Joe not only built a successful career, but also began reforming the small parts of the legal system he saw as flawed. His personal and professional life became a testament to how adversity can be transformed into advocacy and positive change. Joe and Sarah's divorce was finalized without contest. Sarah, realizing the error of her actions and the suffering she caused, tried to apologize and seek an amicable reconciliation, but Joe had already closed that chapter of his life. He accepted her apology, but decided to move on alone, focusing on his career and personal well-being. During the divorce process, they both went through emotionally charged moments. In one of the final meetings with the lawyers present, Sarah expressed her remorse and sadness for the damage her actions had caused the marriage. "I never meant to hurt you like this, Joe. I hope one day you can forgive me," she said, tears in her eyes. Joe, though still hurt, recognized the sincerity in her words. He responded with a reserved calm, thanking her for her apology and expressing his wish that they both find peace and happiness on their separate paths. After signing the final divorce papers, Joe felt a mix of relief and sadness. The official end of his marriage marked a new beginning for him, but also the end of a relationship he had once deeply cherished. He knew he needed time to heal and rediscover who he was outside the context of his marriage. In the following months, Joe devoted himself even more to his work and self-care. He began practicing meditation and joined a local running group, finding in these activities a way to process his emotions and rebuild his life. This period of reflection and personal growth was crucial for him, allowing him to establish new priorities and strengthen his commitment to his personal and professional values. The divorce, though painful, ended up being a catalyst for Joe to reassess and reaffirm his own identity and life goals. He emerged from this experience with a new perspective on relationships and a renewed passion for making a difference in others' lives through his profession. Joe's case against Dr. Williams became a case study at several law schools, discussed in ethics classes as a prime example of personal integrity facing professional corruption. Joe was invited to lecture about his experience, encouraging future lawyers to stand firm in their ethical principles. Joe's lectures quickly gained popularity among law schools. He shared not only the details of the case, but also the emotional and ethical difficulties he faced in deciding to expose a respected professor. His personal account, enriched with reflections on the role of ethics in legal practice, transformed his lectures into powerful learning sessions. Ethics is not just a part of the curriculum, it is the foundation upon which our entire professional practice must be built, he often stated during his presentations. At every university he visited, Joe was met with eager questions from students seeking guidance on how to navigate similar ethical dilemmas. His responses, always measured and grounded in his own experience, helped shed light on the practical challenges of applying ethical principles in the real world, often complex and ambiguous. Joe's story also inspired curricular changes at some institutions, which began to place stronger emphasis on ethics and personal responsibility within their law programs. Colleges initiated workshops and seminars, some even instituting ethics awards in Joe's name, recognizing students who demonstrated exceptional integrity. Moreover, Joe collaborated with ethics professors and experts to develop new educational resources, including case simulations and debates that allowed students to explore and resolve ethical dilemmas in a practical, engaging manner. These initiatives helped better prepare future lawyers for the ethical challenges they would encounter in their careers, ensuring the legacy of his fight against corruption continued to positively influence future generations of legal professionals. Over the years, Joe became an advocate for ethical reform in legal education, working with institutions to develop more stringent codes of conduct for professors and students. His story inspired many not to remain silent in the face of injustice, raising the standard of expected behavior in the legal field. His commitment to promoting ethics extended beyond lectures and classrooms. Joe collaborated with several national lawyer organizations to review and strengthen the ethical guidelines applicable to law professors. He actively participated in committees focused on creating transparent and fair academic environments, ensuring future lawyers learned in a space that valued integrity above all else. Joe was also instrumental in introducing ethical mentorship programs at universities, where experienced and respected professionals guided law students through real ethical challenges, preparing them not just for exams, but for professional life. These programs became incredibly popular and were credited with significantly improving students' understanding of how to apply ethics in legal practice. Additionally, Joe established a foundation that offered scholarships to law students who demonstrated an exceptional commitment to ethics and justice. Joe's foundation not only financially assisted these students, but also connected them with internship opportunities at organizations that valued ethical practices, further amplifying the impact of his initiatives. These actions reinforced the belief that true change in the legal field begins with education, and integrity needs to be a priority from the very start of a law career. Joe continued to fight for these changes, hopeful and determined to see a day when ethics was the unquestioned norm, not the exception. On a personal level, Joe found peace by embracing hobbies and activities he had previously neglected. He rediscovered his love for nature, participating in hikes and meditation retreats that helped restore his emotional balance. His journey from pain to peace showed him that despite challenges, it is always possible to rebuild and find new meaning in life. Each trail Joe hiked in the mountains served as a metaphor for his own recovery and personal growth. The fresh air and expansive views gave him a sense of freedom and possibility, far removed from courtrooms and the stresses of his work. These hikes became a sacred ritual, a time to reflect on his life, choices, and the future. During one of those meditation retreats, Joe had the opportunity to completely disconnect from the outside world and immerse himself in a process of self-examination. The quiet environment and meditation techniques helped him achieve a state of mental clarity and peace that he hadn't felt in a long time. He learned to meditate on his feelings, accepting them without judgment and letting them go, a practice that brought great relief to the emotional scars left by his past experience. Moreover, Joe began to get involved in community activities, offering free classes on legal rights awareness and ethics for local groups. This interaction with the community not only strengthened his commitment to justice, but also provided him with a sense of purpose and connection with people who might not otherwise have access to this information. Through these activities, Joe found a new passion for life and a realization that happiness can be rebuilt. Even after the deepest betrayals and losses, he learned that self-care is as important as fighting for the rights of others, and that finding a balance between professional and personal life is essential for well-being. Years after the storm of his personal and academic life, Joe looks back not with resentment, but with gratitude for the strength and clarity he gained through his trial. He transformed the pain of betrayal and disappointment into a fruitful career and a life purpose that helped reform part of the legal education system. Joe became an example of resilience and integrity, inspiring not only fellow lawyers, but all those facing adversity. Reflecting on his journey, Joe recognized how each challenge served to strengthen his character and deepen his commitment to justice. He saw how his personal story had motivated positive changes and helped others stand up against injustice. Every step I took, as difficult as it was, brought me to a better place, not just professionally, but in my personal life. He shared during an interview where he spoke about the importance of resilience and perseverance. In his love life, Joe found new happiness with Emily, a colleague who shared his passion for social justice and ethics. Together, they formed a partnership based on mutual respect and admiration, far removed from the traumas of the past. Emily, with her own story of overcoming, complemented Joe in ways he had never imagined. Together, they explored new projects, both professional and personal, planning future initiatives to promote justice and ethics. Joe's life, now filled with love and success, was proof that even after the greatest storms, the sun can shine again. His example showed that true strength often comes not from what is easy, but from what is challenging and transformative. He continued to inspire others through his speeches, writings, and the way he lived, always emphasizing the importance of facing adversity with courage and integrity. What would you do in Joe's place? Comment on what you would do, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to keep following more stories like this one. See you in a new story.